Good morning, afternoon, or evening, y'all. My name is Shannon, and today we are going to be going over the 15 books I read in March. I wanted to go over just my stats for reading this month, so I brought out my book journal. I physically read 6 books. I listened to 5 audiobooks, and then I read 4 books that was like a mix of reading physically and listening to the audiobook. My average rating was 3.8 stars. The number of pages I read this month was 6,068. I read 2 literary fictions, 4 YA fantasies. I read 1 nonfiction book. I read 2 regular adult fantasy books, and then I read 6 romance books. With that being said, let's just get started. The first book I read this month was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I thought this was fine. I honestly can't even remember what I really thought about it when I was reading it because I was so bored. I didn't really care about a good portion of this book. I was really just annoyed most of the time because of how unfairly this girl was being treated. This book takes place in the 50s and the 70s. Like it switches timelines from when we see Kaya growing up in the Carolina marsh and when she is on trial for murder because she has been so ostracized and isolated that people just refer to her as the marsh girl. It's a whole thing. Like, I see the hype. It just was not for me. Literary fiction and mystery are both of my least read genres, and this just wasn't really my thing. But I still think I would rate it like 3 stars because I did enjoy like watching her grow up and that part of the timeline. But the crime, I really didn't care at all. The next book I read was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. This is also a literary fiction book. I actually rated this 5 stars. This book is about Elizabeth Zott, and again we follow her through like the 50s to, I believe, the 60s. I'm not sure if we get into the 70s, but she starts out as a chemist and we follow her like insane life trajectory where she ends up having a child and losing her job as a chemist to eventually end up on a cooking show that focuses on how chemistry is an integral part of cooking. And it was just an absolutely incredible book. The feminism within this book made me love it all the more. It was just so insane seeing everything she was up against and still came out the way she did at the end. It was just such an incredible book, and I had the 5-star feeling from the get-go. Like, I almost immediately knew this was going to be a 5-star book for me. I just absolutely love it so much. The next book I read, I don't know where my physical copy is. I think it might be upstairs somewhere, but I actually reread My Life with the Walter Boys because didn't know this at all. The sequel to that book comes out next month, or what is now this month because this video is going up in April. I was floored when I found out because if you guys have been watching my channel long enough to remember when I first read this book, I rated it 3 stars because I was so incredibly annoyed with how it ended, because it is a very open-ended ending and like very unsatisfying. But the author came out and said that she always had the intent to write a sequel. So I reread it. I rated it 4 stars this time because I enjoyed it so much more knowing there's a next book coming out. I'm very intrigued to see how her writing style has changed in the like almost 15 years since she originally published this book on Wattpad. This book is about, I honestly don't remember what her name is, but it's about this girl who tragically loses her parents and like her entire family and ends up having to move to her mother's best friend's house where they have like 10 kids. And it ends up being a love triangle between 2 of the brothers in the house. I know so many people that say they don't like love triangles, but then they will like be obsessed with The Vampire Diaries or The Summer I Turned Pretty. A massive love triangle. People will say that they love that show and then say that they don't love triangles. I just don't get it. But I always eat up love triangles. This was no different. and I'm so excited for the next book to come out this month. Those 3 books were actually the only books I read in the first half of this month, so all of these other books I'm showing you have been read in the last 2 weeks. Anywho, we have Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. This was so incredibly fascinating. We follow so many characters throughout this, but the main 2 characters, I would say, are Fox and Viola, and Fox is the godson of Death, and Viola is a vampire who is trying to sell a house with a poltergeist living in it. Anywho, somehow all of these characters get interwoven together, and they find out that Death is actually in a lot of trouble, and I'm explaining this so poorly. There is a demon king within this book that somehow manages to basically kidnap Death and force him to play this game, which if Death loses, this demon king will become the master of Death, okay? And so they have to figure out how to beat him, and it brings all of these characters together. We have archangels, we have vampires, we have a bunch of demons, we have a bunch of gods. It was just such an interesting story, and I honestly can't even believe the brain that Olivia Blake has, because I do not know how she comes up with these stories. Next, I listened to This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. This was fine. It was like a nice, cute summer romance. Kind of a palate cleanser book because I was about to go into Sunrise on the Reaping. I mostly read this because I wanted to see whether or not I actually enjoy Carly Fortune's writing, because I previously tried to read Every Summer After and I DNF'd it. I did not enjoy it at all, and I actually really enjoyed this. Like I said, it was a nice palate cleanser book. It is about Lucy and Felix, and they end up hooking up one summer night, and then they find out Felix is Lucy's best friend's younger brother, and they have to like pretend this never happened, and we are flipping in the timeline from past to present from when all of this is happening, and it's just such a cute story, and I always love brothers best friends romances. This was no different. It was such a nice book, and I rated it like 3.5 stars. The next book I read was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Oh my god, this book I rated it 4.5 stars. Let's start there. I loved everything about this book. It was just it was such a good book. I literally loved every single aspect of this book. If you are unaware, this is Haymitch's Hunger Games from the Hunger Games trilogy. I said this in the reading vlog where I read this. This book is essentially what feels like after you've grown up in a family your entire life, and then you find out all the lore about like specific family members. There are so many callbacks and references to every single thing that has happened in the Hunger Games series. Mags is in here, Beetee, Wyrus, Plutarch, obviously Snow is in here. I just loved everything about this book. I sobbed hysterically so many times. I've been non-stop seeing edits for this book on my For You page on TikTok. I loved it so much, and I love Suzanne Collins too, because the political messaging throughout this book was very clear. It was just such an extraordinary book. Haymitch's Hunger Games, where instead of 24 tributes, they have 48 because it's the second quarter quell. Absolutely insane. So many plot twists. Such a good book. Oh my god. Nothing but good things to say about that series. The next series I read actually was The Dance of Thieves duology. I ate this up. I read this entire duology in 2 days. I just could not put it down once I picked it up. This is about Cassie and Jace. And Kazi is coming into Jace's like town pretty much where his family rules to try to find a criminal that the queen has specifically tasked her to find. And something happens where her and Jace are like forced proximity, and that was so good. Things end up getting so complicated. It's just the ultimate enemies to lovers, and I couldn't put it down. I loved everything about this duology. I honestly don't have a single critique. It was a little slow for me to get into, but again, that was my fault because I was getting myself out of a book slump. But I just absolutely loved everything about this duology. Something I specifically loved was that they were together by like at the end of the first book, which might be a spoiler, but something I really don't like, specifically in duologies, is that there is usually a major betrayal in the romance right at the end, and then most of the conflict in the second book is them like getting back together. But instead, they were together at the end of the first book and basically just faced the problems that were actually happening to them in the second book together, which I don't know, I feel like I'm explaining it badly, but I just really appreciated that the conflict that was moving the plot in the second book wasn't just about the romance, and it had to do with so much more. It was so good. I rated this book 4.5 stars, again because it was a little hard for me to get into, but I don't think that was the book's fault at all. And then I rated Valthies 5 stars. I just loved this duology so much. Next, I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This again just affirmed the fact that I love Ali Hazelwood's writing and the way she writes men in books. I just think she has such a knack for writing basically perfect book boyfriends, and this was no exception. Adam was perfect. This is a fake dating, biology, university, like centered romance. I noticed so many parallels to lessons in chemistry with this book. It was actually crazy. I loved the way she writes her conflict in this book. I don't think it was too dramatic or just like put in just to be put in. It felt very real, and I greatly appreciated that. I think I would rate this like 4.5 stars. The next book I read, Don't Hate Me, Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I knew this was a memoir going into it. Like, I was conscious of that. I didn't really realize how much of a memoir it was going to be until I started reading, and I, quite frankly, did not care. I listened to it, so I did finish it, but if I were just physically reading this, I probably wouldn't have. I don't really enjoy memoirs, but I'm not gonna give it a rating because it's like someone's life story. It personally wasn't for me. The next book I read was The Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is the second book in the Crimson Moth duology. I was heavily anticipating this book after I read Heartless Hunter, the first book. I'm not gonna lie, this book did let me down a little bit. It is a witch and witch hunter romance, and that is kind of the main plot device throughout the first book. This one is a little bit more complicated. I won't go into the details, obviously, because it's the second book in a duology, but I felt like the shift from them not hating each other anymore was very sudden, because it was 1 second where Gideon didn't think he could trust her, and then maybe like the next chapter he's like completely trusting her, and I was like, what's going on here? I also felt that it was very predictable, and I could see where it was going from like a mile away, but I did really still enjoy it, and I do think it was a good conclusion to the duology. So I did rate it like 4.25 stars. Next, I'm about to be like a #1 hater. I DNF'd Tell Me Lies. I got 50 pages into this, I think, before I could not stand it. Being in Stephen's head was quite honestly one of the most disturbing things I have ever read and experienced. Just the way that he viewed women and genuinely thought about how he could manipulate them made me so wildly uncomfortable. It legitimately made me feel like I wanted to like peel off my skin. I could not stand it. I just absolutely not. Absolutely not. All I know about the premise of this book is that it's about Stephen and Lucy, I think, and they have a very toxic relationship, and we go through like years of their lives and relationship in this book. But it was absolutely not for me. Okay, next, I reread Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I wanted to reread this because I have the like collector's like special edition, and I wanted to annotate this version because I wanted to. I loved going back into this world. It felt like just like returning to one of my favorite worlds and my favorite characters. This reread really just affirmed that Waylay is absolutely my favorite character in this entire book. I know that might be a little weird given that she's a child, but I just absolutely adore that girl and her journey throughout like accepting love and learning how to actually be a child rather than parenting her mother the way she used to have to. This book is about Naomi and Knox, if you are unaware. Naomi comes into this small town and is immediately getting off on the wrong foot with Knox because he thinks she is her twin sister, who's basically a tornado of a person. And it just goes on from there. Her twin sister abandons Waylay, the 11-year-old, with Naomi, and she has to start taking care of this girl, and it's just a really nice Grumpy Sunshine romance. I have always loved it. I rated it 5 stars then. I do still feel like it's 5 stars now. I just really, really enjoyed it, and getting to be back with those characters again. Next, I both listened and read When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This book was very confusing. I'm not even gonna lie to you, it was very confusing at times. The magic system I understood, it's like an elemental magic kind of thing. The dragons and moons falling, didn't really understand that at all. But the romance, super, super interesting. We follow Khan and Rave throughout this story. Rave is like a super cutthroat girl, basically just trying to survive, and she ends up bumping into Khan when she is stuck in a prison cell, and he can't believe his eyes. He thinks she is someone he used to know. It is just such an incredible story. I do think it could have been shortened a little bit and you would still get all the information you need, but it was an absolutely incredible and fascinating story. I'm so excited for the next book in this series because I cannot wait to see how certain characters react to certain information that we find out near the end of this book. But I think I would rate it like 4 stars. Really, really good, but very high fantasy, and expect to use a lot of brain power reading this book. And then lastly, we have Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I started listening to this last night, actually. It's the 31st while I'm filming this. I finished this so fast. It was a 7-hour audiobook. I listened for like 2 hours at 1.7 speed, and I was literally like 40% of the way in, which felt really weird, given that if I listen for 2 hours, I'm usually not even 20% of the way in. But I did really, really enjoy it. It was just a nice, like, palette cleanser book. I think that is what I will use this entire series for, just palette cleansers between fantasy books, because if I read fantasy after fantasy, I tend to mesh details together and can't remember things correctly. But it was a cute romance, I guess. Characters acted super, super immature during the conflict, and it could have easily been solved by communicating properly, but instead they kind of both threw temper tantrums, it felt like, which was a little ridiculous because they were both grown-ass adults, but still cute, and I did enjoy it. I rated it like 3 stars. I would show you my like book journal spread for this month, but I feel like you guys don't really care. If you would like to see how I do my book journal and scrapbooking, because I use it for both, just let me know and I will absolutely like make a video and talk about it, because I won't even lie, this is one of the things I take great pride in. And yeah, those are the 15 books I read this month. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you stayed until this point in the video, I cannot thank you enough. I appreciate each and every single one of your beautiful faces. I hope you all are having an absolutely incredible morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the world. And I will hopefully see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.